welcome back to the shack. This weekend's project is going to be removing a bunch of light rust from the milling vise that I picked up with the mill drill. The rust isn't that bad, so it really doesn't need to get sandblasted or bead blasted or soda blasted. So instead, I'm going to do the first method I was taught, which is frankly the method I prefer for anything that has nice precision surfaces on it, and that's using a series of wire brushes and Scotch-Brite pads with some oil to slowly clean all of that off. Ideally, I'd probably go through and surface grind this thing back to, nice and flat, but I don't have a surface grinder. So this should work. Pretty much what you're going to need is a wire brush. Usually, cheap stainless steel works just fine. Ideally, I usually use the red Scotch-Brite pads. I think they're number 7447. But I'm fresh out of those. So I'm going to be using one of their coarse pads and one of their very, very fine pads. All of this stuff you can pick up at Home Depot for, a couple bucks. And then everybody's favorite, WD-40. Along with a big container of rags. So the first thing you want to do is put down some kind of paper or plastic on top of whatever you're working on, because the combination of the rust and the oil in WD-40 will turn this into a very, very effective brown paint, and it will become very difficult to get off of really anything that's not metal. So once you have your work surface set up, you're going to want to start taking apart the vise itself. First, I'm going to pull off the hard jaws on here. This being a Chinese vise, they're 8mm. 8mm socket screws, and I have to admit those are pretty short screws. I'm gonna go and get some longer ones for that eventually. And the person who owned this vise previously, along with the mill itself, had a bad tendency of using SAE size wrenches and Allen keys on metric fasteners. So on the two on this vise, they're pretty chewed up inside. So I might as well just replace all of them. It's not too expensive to do that. And it's usually a good idea to have a few of them on hand in case you drop one behind a machine. So the vise jaws are actually, pretty clean. It doesn't look like I'm gonna have to do much to them, which is nice. I'll go through and check how square and parallel these are before I put this all together. Alright, so next up we're going to remove probably the stationary jaw and the moving jaw and all of the bits and pieces that come with it. Alright, so the screws that are holding the stationary jaw in are down in these pockets on the underside, which probably have never been removed. Yeah, they're in there pretty good. So to get it loose, you're probably going to need a rubber mallet to lift it off of the keys on the bottom. And yeah, it's not too bad of rust. It's a nice, fairly light coating, usually from just humidity. So that's out. Let's grab a pair of pliers. And when removing any kind of key, you never want to grab on the register face if you can avoid it. You always want to grab on the part of it that you know is not going to be coming in contact with anything important. So if the pliers are to slip like that, or mar up the surface, you're not marring up the nice register surface. Okay, now with that off, I should be able to drive the movable vise section all the way forward. Alright, and there it is. Pretty much a cheap Chinese clone of a Kurt angle lock system. Oh, I didn't even realize that. There's a screw. There's a screw holding in the vise nut here. That. Oh wow, you didn't even bother to machine any of that. Alright, so next we're going to remove the drive screw out of this, which is just a set screw on this collar on the end. Let's pull that out. And you have there. And remember that the spring washer is on the outside portion of this assembly. And another handy little trick, whenever you're taking something apart into, and it has numerous sub-assemblies, if you're not going to be doing anything with the parts directly, try and put them back together in the way that they had come apart. Keeps you from losing bits and pieces.